Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're diving into a massive question, one that kind of echoes through all of history. Why do great empires fall? We're going to journey all the way back to the final days of Rome to see if the economic cracks that brought it down can maybe, just maybe, tell us something about the challenges we're facing in our world today.
I know. It sounds super dramatic, right? But the parallels are honestly striking, especially when you stop looking at the battlefields and start looking at the money. You see, the story of Rome's decline isn't just some dusty old history lesson. It might actually be a blueprint, a kind of financial warning for our own time.
Because here's the big idea we're exploring today. Empires don't just collapse overnight. They unravel. And the thread that pulls them apart isn't always a conquering army. Nope. More often than not, it's about the economy. It's a slow, almost predictable shift of economic power that can bring even the mightiest civilizations to their knees.
So, to really get how empires unravel, we first have to understand how they're built in the first place. And it all starts with this fundamental economic engine, a dynamic that creates just immense wealth. The relationship between what we call the imperial core and its periphery.
Okay, so what is this core periphery thing? Well, at its heart, it's pretty simple. The core, you can think of that as Rome itself, or today the big Western nations, builds these huge systems like trade routes and legal frameworks. Now, these systems are of course designed to funnel wealth back to the center. But here's the twist. As a side effect, they also build up the periphery. All the provinces, the colonies, and trading partners. They create brand new centers of wealth and opportunity out on the edges.
And you can see this dynamic in action through real people. On one side, you have this guy Alcinius, a noble in the Roman province of Gaul. He used the Roman system, its education, its bureaucracy, to become incredibly powerful, and then he poured that new wealth back into his homeland. Then, fast forward a couple thousand years, you have the Tata family in India. They started as simple traders in the British Empire and used those imperial trade networks to build a global industrial powerhouse. Two different eras, but it's the exact same playbook. The periphery learns to master the core system for its own benefit.
And this leads us directly to the great, unintended consequence of building an empire. See, when you build up the periphery, you're not just giving them money. You're giving them the tools and the wealth to eventually challenge you. And that's exactly where the power shift begins.
It's this incredible irony, isn't it? The very system that makes an empire so dominant ultimately ends up planting the seeds of its own decline. As the periphery gets richer and more organized, the whole economic and military balance of power, well, it just inevitably starts to tip away from the center.
And this shows you exactly how it happened to Rome. At first, you have these small, pretty manageable tribes on the border. Not a big deal for the Roman legions. But over time, fueled by Roman trade and all the money Rome was spending in the region, they grew. They formed bigger, more powerful federations. Over centuries, they became sophisticated players that Rome couldn't just boss around anymore. They became equals, and then they became rivals.
Now get this, compare that slow-burn Roman process to the modern world, where Rome's power shift took centuries. Ours has happened in just a few decades. Back in 1980, the G7, the West's economic core, controlled about 60% of the world's GDP. By 2020, that had dropped to around 40%. And in that same time, the E7, a group of major emerging economies, just surged right past them. Globalization has put that ancient process on hyperdrive.
So here's the crucial takeaway from all this. Economic change is never just economic. It's always political. When new centers of wealth pop up, they are inevitably going to demand a new place at the global table. They build new alliances and power blocks to protect their newfound prosperity and, you bet, to assert their own interests on the world stage.
And this external power shift, well, it inevitably kicks off a massive crisis back home. As the core's dominance starts to fade, it suddenly finds itself with these empire-sized bills that it just can't afford anymore. And that leads to two things: debt and deep social division.
I mean, just think about it for a second. You still have a huge military you need to fund, you've got vast borders to defend, and all these complex social programs that your citizens now depend on. But your economic engine just isn't what it used to be. The money coming in no longer matches the money going out. This, right here, is the fiscal trap that so many aging empires fall into.
So how did Rome try to get out of this mess? Basically, they just started printing money. The denarius coin, which was once almost pure silver, was gradually watered down, debased, until it had only about 5% silver left in it. And the result? Runaway hyperinflation that absolutely destroyed people's savings and shattered the trust between the government and its citizens.
And what's our modern version of that?
Instead of debasing coins, we issue debt. Massive, staggering amounts of it. The U.S. national debt alone is over $30 trillion, a number so big it's hard to even wrap your head around. And it's a pretty similar story across much of the Western world. We're essentially borrowing from the future to pay for today's bills.
So when you lay it all out, you see this four-step cycle of crisis. And it's kind of spooky how similar the pattern is for ancient Rome and for us today. Outside pressure leads to a spending gap, which forces these desperate financial moves, which ultimately eats away at public trust and starts tearing society apart from the inside.
Okay, so this all sounds pretty bleak, I get it. But does history just have to repeat itself? Is decline just inevitable? Or can the West find a different path, one that avoids Rome's ultimate fate? Let's take a look at the options. This quote right here, it just nails it. The world has fundamentally changed. The kind of economic dominance the West enjoyed for centuries, it's gone. And no amount of wishful thinking or protectionism is going to bring it back. A totally new strategy is needed.
And really, it all boils down to a fundamental choice. One path is confrontation, trying to cling to the old order through things like trade wars, which risks a massive conflict. The other path is cooperation, accepting that the world has changed and working to negotiate a new, more stable system, where these rising powers have a real stake in its success. That means treating them like actual partners, not like subjects.
And you know, history gives us a pretty brutal warning about making the wrong choice here. In places like Gaul and Spain, where Roman elites negotiated with the new powers, Roman culture, law, and language, they all survived and evolved. But in Britain, which kind of chose to go it alone in a sort of first Brexit, negotiation failed. And the result? Roman civilization was almost completely wiped out. It plunged the island into a true dark age. The stakes are incredibly, incredibly high.
And so we end right back where we started. The economic plates of the world have shifted. New powers have risen, and the choice is whether to fight against this historic tide or to try and skillfully navigate it. What history teaches us is that the fall of an empire isn't just one single event. It's a long series of choices. And right now, those choices are ours to make. Thanks for joining me.